Hello and welcome to the Armenian News Network, Grung. I'm Asbed Bedrossian and I'm here with Hovik Manucharyan. This Conversations on Grung episode came about from our discussion with Benyamin Poghosyan a few days ago during last week's Week in Review episode. This episode was recorded on Friday, October 14, 2022. Since the end of the 44-day war, Benyamin Poghosyan has advised caution to Armenia's leadership in negotiating for a so-called peace with Azerbaijan, and that any final agreement that leaves out Nagorno-Karabakh means that ultimately it will be depopulated of Armenians. Benyamin Poghosyan is the chairman of the Yerevan-based think tank Center for Political and Economic Strategic Studies. Thank you for coming back for this discussion, Benyamin. Great to have you.
Hi, Benjamin.
Thank you for having me, Asbed and Hovik. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
Okay, Benjamin, on Monday we discussed last week's geopolitical issues and something stuck in my mind, so that's why we're back to discuss this one topic today. You said we should try to understand that there is a difference for Azerbaijan between the issue of Karabakh and the establishment of corridors. Of course, by the issue of Karabakh, you meant Azerbaijan's demands that Armenia forget the Nagorno-Karabakh issue, accept that Nagorno-Karabakh is part of Azerbaijan, and should be part of Azerbaijan without any status or zero status. I think that's what you had said Monday. You also said that the November 2020 agreement created for Armenia the impression of two demands which were equally important and imperative for Azerbaijan. So those two issues would be Nagorno-Karabakh and the issue of corridors, meaning corridors through Sunik, the so-called Zangezur corridor. Because Armenia lost the war in 2020, it was put in front of a situation of not being able to reject both demands. But in reality, the signals during the negotiations have been that perhaps Armenia did have a choice of rejecting one of them and possibly saving face. Can you explain what you meant with this?
Okay, as far as I understand, Azerbaijani negotiation tactics, starting immediately after the end of the Second Karabakh War, Azerbaijan has very strategic and primary goal to have an agreement, not a statement, but an agreement in accordance with international law, signed by Armenian leader, ratified by the Armenian parliament, approved by the constitutional court, which will agree to Azerbaijani's notion that there is no Nagorno-Karabakh administrative territorial unit within Azerbaijan, which means that it will not be the jump back to the 1988 situation, because in February 1988, Nagorno-Karabakh was an autonomous region within Soviet Azerbaijan. What Azerbaijan wants is to come back to nowhere, because never Karabakh was part of Azerbaijan without any autonomy. Karabakh was never part of Azerbaijan except Soviet period, and we all know that in 1921, in July 1921, decision was made by this Caucasian Bureau of Bolshevik Party to make Karabakh as an autonomy within Azerbaijan. Then in 1923, they finally established autonomy with restricted borders. But in any case, never in the history, Nagorno-Karabakh was part of Azerbaijan with zero status. So definitely, if Azerbaijan can achieve this, that Armenia agrees that Nagorno-Karabakh is Azerbaijan with zero status, which means there is no Nagorno-Karabakh. We even cannot say that Armenia agrees that Nagorno-Karabakh is part of Azerbaijan, that Armenia agrees that Nagorno-Karabakh simply does not exist. This will be huge, really huge achievement for Azerbaijan.
Right.
And of course, it will be complete disaster for Armenia, for Armenian nation, not only Armenians who live in Armenia, not only Republic of Armenia, not only the Armenian state, but also the entire Armenian nation, these 10 million or 11 million people living all around the globe. This will be complete disaster, complete humiliation. And at the end of the day, this will open the door or pave the way for additional losses. Because again, if Azerbaijan digests Nagorno-Karabakh, then it can concentrate with support and led by Turkey, it will focus all its resources on Armenia itself. So how to make this happen? How to get this fantastic achievement for Azerbaijan, complete disaster for Armenia, but simultaneously to create a perception in Armenia that this is not the worst case scenario, like to create a perception within Armenian political circles, expert community, and also general society, and also in Armenian diaspora, that this is not the worst case scenario. Yes, it's something terrible, but this is not the worst case scenario.
So essentially, a fake choice was being given to Armenia.
Yes, it was given to Armenia a fake choice that, look, guys, you can lose Karabakh, or you can give us corridor, or both. You can both lose Karabakh and give us corridor, but also you can give us Karabakh but reject the notion of corridor. Which means that if you are offered the choice, and this is a interestingly psychological issue, even coming from maybe the management or marketing, if you are given choice that, okay, there are two demands. If there are two demands and you accept only one and reject the second demand, regardless how terrible is the demand which you are going to accept, even psychologically, you feel somehow satisfied, or at least not completely humiliated, not completely destroyed, because you are telling, okay, yes, I accepted very tough demand, and what happened is a really tragedy or terrible thing. But this is not worst case scenario, because worst case scenario is if I would admit two demands. In this case, I will agree that Nagorno-Karabakh does not exist simply, and also I will provide corridor from Azerbaijan to Nakhichevan and Turkey via Syunik. So if I am able to reject at least one demand, it's mean not complete humiliation. Of course, it's not win-win solution, but at least not complete disaster. And then if negotiations are going in this way, that Azerbaijan is putting pressure, okay, forget about Nagorno-Karabakh, accept or agree that Nagorno-Karabakh does not exist, and give us corridor. Both are important for me. You should do the both. And then you are thinking, no, it's terrible. At least I should reject something. And then, if during negotiations somehow Azerbaijan is hinting that, okay, maybe if you are signing a peace agreement according to which simply there is no Nagorno-Karabakh or Nagorno-Karabakh does not exist, and maybe we can drop our demand on corridor, at least for some period of time, let's say this way. Then the negotiator itself, or negotiators, or the political class, expert community, or even larger society, they are thinking, okay, yes, to accept that Nagorno-Karabakh does not exist, this is terrible. Because again, this is not only ruining the status quo emerged on November 10, 2020, which itself is terrible or was terrible for Armenia, but it also didn't bring us back to the February 1988, when Karabakh was autonomous region. It was bringing us to the complete new place when never in history there was a Karabakh without any autonomy within Azerbaijan. Okay, this is terrible. But we are able to reject the demand of corridor. So at least we were able to somehow protect part of Armenian interests, or at least not to sacrifice 100% vital interest of Armenia. We sacrificed, I don't know, 70% of our interests, but at least we were able to defend 30% of our interest.
But Benjamin, when was this problem created? Was it created at the time of signing the agreement on November 10, 2020, or did it happen throughout the negotiations that the public relations was lost? Because in point 9, there was no concept of corridor. Like, well, there was a transportation, communication, and stuff like that that needed to be
Very
open, but not
interesting question.
so-called a corridor, right? So was it the signing of an agreement with point 9 included, or was it later?
No, it was later, because if you analyze the agreement signed in November 9 or 10, 2020, yes, there was nothing about Zangezur corridor, but also there was nothing about non-existence of Nagorno-Karabakh, because November 10, 2020 statement itself clearly speaks about Nagorno-Karabakh as a separate unit, because it states that the Russian peacekeepers are going to be deployed in Nagorno-Karabakh. The Lachin corridor should connect Armenia with Nagorno-Karabakh. So the November 10 statement, first, it clearly accepts the fact of existence of Nagorno-Karabakh. Second, it speaks nothing about establishing or opening the corridor connecting Azerbaijan with Nakhichevan via Syunik or via other territories of Armenia. So this protest started after November 10, because Azerbaijan started to demand and to state that, okay, war solves conflict and there is no Nagorno-Karabakh. I believe Aliyev started to speak about that maybe even in mid-November 2020. And we can go back even to his and President Erdogan's speech in the so-called victory parade in Baku. I believe it took place on December 10, 2020. Almost immediately after the signature of November 10 statement, Azerbaijan changed its rhetoric and changed the offensive statement, telling that war solved Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. There is no conflict, and even more, there is no Nagorno-Karabakh. Plus, they almost immediately after the signature of November 10 statement, they started to speak about Zangezur corridor, telling that, okay, if there is Lachin corridor, there should be Zangezur corridor, or at least they start to interpret the Article 9 of November 10 statement as a clear obligation or requirement from Armenia to establish the Zangezur corridor. So simultaneously putting forward two demands, which has nothing to do with November 10 statement, or at least they are not clearly derived from November 10 statement, Azerbaijan put pressure on Armenia. Then he started to use military force to blackmail Armenia by starting to encroach into Armenian territory. May 2021, November 2021, Sot, Black Lake, etc. And the recent more egregious encroachment, September 2022, just a month ago.
Yeah. One thing I want to add is that it seems to me that Russia adopted all of this terminology very readily and quickly. They immediately started using terminology like Zangezur corridor, Lachin corridor, whatever. All of the Azeri terminology was accepted by Russia. Is this correct?
No, frankly speaking, I cannot say that Russia expected all this terminology because, for example, even in late 2021, when in 2021 this trilateral working group was established under the deputy prime ministers to working on restoration of communications. And the Russian deputy prime minister was Alexei Overchuk.
Right.
And Mr. Overchuk visited many times to Armenia, both in 2021 and also in 2022. And I can recall at least 3 times when Mr. Overchuk clearly stated, at least in Armenia, that we don't discuss anything about opening corridor via territory of Armenia.
And the last one was in the last month. Yeah.
Yes, the last one was in the last month, but even there was such statement even in late 2021, in 2022. So we cannot say that Russia agrees to the term of Zangezur corridor and says that yes. And regarding that, there is no Nagorno-Karabakh. Absolutely no, because as far as I know, the Russian version of peace agreement, which the last draft was presented during Russian envoy Mr. Khovayev visit to Azerbaijan and then to Armenia in early September 2022. By the way, Khovayev visited Armenia on September 13, on the day when Azerbaijan launched its new aggression against Armenia. But in the Russian draft of peace agreement brought by Mr. Khovayev, which itself, of course, was based on preliminary discussions between leaders of Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Russia, there was a separate point or article about Nagorno-Karabakh. Nagorno-Karabakh, according to which Armenia and Azerbaijan agreed that Nagorno-Karabakh conflict is not solved, and they agreed to continue negotiations to settle the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. So this article was in Russian version of peace agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan, which was presented to Armenia and Azerbaijan during Russian special envoy Mr. Khovayev latest visit to the region in September 2022. It's another issue that Azerbaijan rejected this version, and Azerbaijan said,
Armenia
no,
accepted.
I'm not going. Armenia accepted, Azerbaijan rejected, and then I'm not sure what Russia did with this. Okay, he accepted Azerbaijan rejection, he started to amend the document, but then this EU or US prepared draft appeared, or frankly speaking, the EU prepared draft was there also starting from mid-2022, when this trilateral summit started in Brussels, I mean, between Pashinyan, Aliyev, and Michel. But in any case, no, we cannot say that Russia accepted Azerbaijan rhetoric, because again, in September 2022, in the Russian elaborated draft peace agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan, there was a clear article about Nagorno-Karabakh, which itself means that Nagorno-Karabakh exists. And again, we can recall many statements by Alexei Overchuk, who said that there is no discussion about corridors, there is no discussion that Armenia should not control the railway or highway which should pass via Armenian territory. But coming back to the Azerbaijani tactics, frankly speaking, I doubt that Azerbaijan needs any railway and highway passing through Armenia if this will be controlled by Armenia. So even let's assume Armenia accepts this Azerbaijani vision that no Armenian border troops should be at the entry point. No Armenian custom officials should be at the entry point. And also in exit point. Entry point, Azerbaijan is unique. Exit point is unique, Nakhichevan. But even in this case, if there are no Armenian border passport or customs control at entry and exit points, at the end of the day, the railway and highway physically passes through Armenian territory.
Right.
And if, including Azerbaijan itself, recognizes Armenian territory, it means that at any moment, for whatever reason, at least theoretically, Armenia will have a chance to close that road, both highway and the railway, for any reason, for any circumstances.
Of course, if there's going to be a peace agreement, I don't know what the problem would be with that.
Yes, but at the end of the day, again, from Azerbaijani perspective, this means that Armenia receives leverage because for unexpected situations or surprised situations, Armenia will have an opportunity to close the railway or highway, even if, again, there is no Armenian passport and border control at entry point and exit point. And I, frankly speaking, don't believe that Azerbaijan is interested in this. So from the beginning, I believe that all these demands of Azerbaijan and the insistence that, okay, there should be no Armenian border and passport control at exit and entry points, all this rhetoric had a clear one primary goal: to create a perception in Armenia that non-existence of Nagorno-Karabakh and this corridor issue, they are the equal important demand for Azerbaijan. And if Armenia will be able to reject at least corridor demand, it will mean that negotiations were not complete disaster for Armenia. That Armenia somehow, if not succeed, at least Armenia did not totally fail in negotiations. And which will create perceptions that even if Armenia agrees that there is no Nagorno-Karabakh, simply Nagorno-Karabakh does not exist, and Azerbaijan says, okay, I don't want any corridors, then Armenia, both society, political elites, or political circles, they can somehow be at least partly satisfied, which means that Azerbaijan creates opportunity for us, so-called, to save face, like to agree to the complete disaster, but simultaneously be happy, at least inside our mind, in our brains.
Benjamin, so what is the alternative? Given the fact that the war was lost horribly, what are the possibilities? What are the options facing the Armenian government?
Now I see 2 or 3 options or scenarios, and let's discuss very briefly. Scenario number 1. We accept this Western elaborated peace agreement when there is nothing about Nagorno-Karabakh, which means that Armenia agrees that there is no Nagorno-Karabakh as territorial administrative unit inside Azerbaijan, and West tries to put pressure on convince Azerbaijan not to break or violate the rights of Azerbaijani citizens of Armenian origin, which for me is complete bullshit. This will very quickly result in no Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh.
Okay.
But the problem is that the next phase of this scenario, let's assume after several years, we have no Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh.
It's the Nakhichevan scenario.
Yes, not only the Nakhichevan scenario, but again, even if this scenario takes place, there are absolutely no guarantees that Azerbaijan and Turkey will not put pressure on Armenia to take part of Syunik or Vayudzor and to physically create corridor. Not simply say, okay, we don't want Armenian passport and border control, but the highway or railway will be part of Armenian territory. No, there is no guarantee that even if saying goodbye or giving up on Nagorno-Karabakh, there are no guarantees that Azerbaijan and Turkey will not try to physically occupy part of Armenia and open this corridor. And even I would say, even there are quite high possibilities that this will take place. Not only there are no guarantees that this is not going to take place, but there is a quite high possibility that after several years, this is going to take place. So this is one scenario. We are giving up on Karabakh, and then we are facing Azerbaijani or joint Azerbaijani-Turkish attack against Armenia. This is scenario number 1.
And what is scenario 2?
Okay, scenario number 2, we are rejecting the peace treaty or peace agreement. We all know that today a technical part of EU mission arrived in Yerevan, and within 1 week or 10 days, observers will arrive. but they are deployed within 2 months. 2 months means that until end of 2022. And this is completely in line with US suggestion made in Washington in late September that peace agreements should be signed until 2022, which means that by sending this observer mission or civilian mission to Armenia, West tells us that, okay, we are providing you guarantees that Azerbaijan will not attack until end of 2022. But if you reject peace treaty, then sorry guys, our guarantees are not working starting from January 2023. Azerbaijan may attack. Of course, we will not applaud Azerbaijan. We will criticize. We will make a lot of condemnation statements, but nothing more. So, second option is that we are simply rejecting to sign peace treaty and doing nothing else, no other action. And then, most probably, we are facing the large-scale offensive of Azerbaijan either directly against Armenia, somewhere in early 2023, or the minimum which Azerbaijan can do, simply they can put their troops on Lachin corridor, even not kick Russians out. Simply, they may put some troops on Lachin corridor and say, okay, we are going to have joint patrol our Lachin corridor. So if Armenians want to travel from Armenia to Nagorno-Karabakh, no problem. Pass through Armenian checkpoints, through Azerbaijani checkpoints, and go to Nagorno-Karabakh, which extremely will complicate the fate of Armenians living in Nagorno-Karabakh. But this is a one sub-scenario. Second sub-scenario, if we are rejecting peace treaty, is a large-scale attack against Armenia itself, with clear goal to open physically this Zangezur corridor, maybe somewhere in the Syunik region or Vayodor region. But I believe that there is a scenario free. So it's not only two scenarios. Either we are giving up Karabakh and then facing Azerbaijani attack after 6 months or 1 year, or we are not giving Karabakh and facing Azerbaijani attack within 3 months. I believe there is a third option. Most probably, Azerbaijan will not launch large-scale attack against Armenia as far as any international observers are here. So what Armenia should do, or what this third scenario means, Armenia should immediately start negotiations with European Union to extend the term of deployment of these observers. And Azerbaijan has no power of veto because observers are deployed in the territory of Armenia. And Azerbaijan simply cannot veto the agreement extends the deployment of European observers into the territory of Armenia. So this is option number one, to start negotiations to extend the deployment of European observers. And option number two, 2 days ago, Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov said to our Armenian Foreign Minister that at least 2 weeks ago, there officially CSTO sent suggestions to Armenia to deploy CSTO observer mission along Armenia-Azerbaijan border. And Sergei Lavrov said that to be able to do that, the one thing is needed is to convene the extraordinary session of collective security. And Lavrov said that because Armenia is CSTO chairman until end of 2022, Armenia should convene this extraordinary session of Council of Collective Security. So Lavrov hinted that, okay, guys, if you really want CSTO observers along Armenia-Azerbaijan border, we are ready. Convene this extraordinary session of Council of Collective Security. Decision will be made and CSTO observers will be deployed. Of course, I'm not sure if this is 100% true or not, because there are discussions that no, this was not offered, etc. But again, what I am telling, Armenia should work with EU to extend this deployment terms or duration of EU civilian mission. And simultaneously, we should very actively work with CSTO to have also CSTO observers along Armenia-Azerbaijan border. This will allow us to continue negotiations with Azerbaijan.
When you say the Armenia-Azerbaijan border, you are actually saying the border that is actually controlled by Armenia, right? Not the
yes.
Not the old Soviet border.
Not telling the so-called international border or former Soviet Armenia, Soviet Azerbaijan border, because the part of these territories are controlled by Azerbaijan.
Right.
I'm speaking on the border line, which is controlled by Armenia as of October 14th.
So the line of contact, actually.
Yes, yes, we may use the term line of contact. So I believe the third scenario, of course, Armenia should say, yes, I am ready to sign peace agreement. But sorry, guys, I'm not ready to sign peace agreement, which completely violates all my core vital national interests and fully satisfies Azerbaijani wishes and whims, because this is not peace treaty. So let's negotiate. I'm ready to negotiate. I'm ready for peace agreement. But at least some core interests of Armenia should be protected. But simultaneously, to postpone the possibility of large-scale attack of Azerbaijan against Armenia, we should do everything first to have European observers deployed in Armenia after December 2022, and we should do everything to bring also CSTO observers.
Okay.
As some kind of leverage.
Pashinyan has said that he is ready to sign the so-called peace treaty in 2022 by December 31. And that's going to be the treaty that is being discussed in Brussels. So do we see any options here, given that that's what he's saying?
Okay. Yes, Prime Minister said about that, and Secretary of Security Council just 2 days ago during his interview stated that agreement was reached in Washington to sign peace deal until end of 2022. But the Secretary of Security Council also stated that agreement also was reached in Washington to reach the limitation of Armenia-Azerbaijan border until end of 2022. But the most important, he said that agreement was reached in Washington during his meeting with Hikmet Hajiyev, facilitated by Jake Sullivan, Biden administration national security advisor. That agreement was reached that international mechanism will be established within which Azerbaijan will negotiate with Nagorno-Karabakh regarding rights and securities of Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh. But immediately after that interview, yesterday, Hikmet Hajiyev gave an interview to Azerbaijani mass media. And he said that from these three statements of Armen Grigoryan about peace treaty, border delimitation, and international mechanism for Nagorno-Karabakh negotiations, he said that only one thing is true. Yes, in Washington, we reached agreement to sign peace treaty until end of 2022. But Hajiyev said it's absurd and science fiction that we can reach border delimitation until end of 2022. And third, he said that we never discussed in Washington any international mechanism for negotiations between Azerbaijan and Nagorno-Karabakh. We never discussed it, and Azerbaijan will never agree to any international mechanism. Frankly speaking, I am waiting for the answer of the Secretary of Security Council,
Right.
Because these negotiations took place only 17 days ago. And so Hikmet Hajiyev stated that Armen Grigoryan had one true statement and two false statements. And also it will be interesting to see the reaction of Jake Sullivan, because as far as I understand, Jake Sullivan also was in the room when they were discussing. But even if Armen Grigoryan will answer and say, no, Hikmet Hajiyev is telling no truth, the fact is that there is a huge gross misinterpretation or disagreements over interpretation what Armen Grigoryan and Hajiyev agreed in Washington regarding the signature of peace treaty, which gives me some understanding that probably we are not very close to the signature of peace treaty if Armen Grigoryan and Hikmet Hajiyev cannot agree even on what they agreed in the meeting which took place only 17 days ago.
All right, we'll leave it there for today. Let's look forward to the statements by Armen Grigoryan and others in the negotiations. Thank you, Benyamin. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Benyamin. Bye.
Okay. Thank you for having me.
All right, that's our show today. As always, we really want you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Twitter and like our Facebook page. We'll talk to you soon.